the thinking behind regional land use partnerships, where the concept has sort of evolved from, and what the Scottish Land Commission's role has been in making recommendations to government on regional land use partnerships. So just to introduce myself, I started with Scottish Land Commission in the role of Regional Land Use Partnerships Project Manager back in February last year now. And I'm actually in a secondment position from Loch Lomond and the Trossachs National Park Authority, where I am the Land Management Programme Manager there. I've a background and training in private land management, and I'm also a new entrant tenanted farmer based in central Scotland. So I'm going to give you a very brief overview to the work we carried out over the last year. I can't sort of go into a huge amount of detail, so I'm happy to take questions at the end or sort of contacted directly after today to discuss in more detail. So just to set the scene and provide the background, the Scottish Government's Programme for Government 2019 included a commitment to develop proposals for regional land use partnerships in Scotland. And as a result of this, the Scottish Land Commission was then asked to provide advice to government and make recommendations on the most effective ways to establish these partnerships. In terms of the Scottish Land Commission's role, we were established under the Land Reform Scotland Act 2016, and so our purpose is to provide direction, leadership and strategic thought to land reform in Scotland. The proposal for regional land use partnerships was first set out in Scotland's land use strategy in 2016. And the Climate Change Act of 2019 then brought sort of renewed ambition to this original proposal. The concept, though, of regional land use partnerships is not a new one. We have had the land use strategy pilots in Aberdeenshire and the Borders. So what's the driver and sort of renewed ambition for these partnerships? As everyone will be aware, land use and land use change is what is now recognised as key to delivering Scotland and also UK's climate change targets for 2030 and 2040. And it's in this regard that regional land use partnerships are seen as pivotal to sort of drive and deliver on this ambition. Also, just sort of thought it would be worth examining and setting out sort of some of the current policy and practice environments where regional land use partnerships sit. So since the idea of the partnerships was first proposed in the 2016 land use strategy, the context around partnerships has sort of developed significantly. The Land Rights and Responsibilities Statement, which was published in 2017, sets out clear principles for the overall framework of land policy and decision making. We've also got the expectations of community empowerment and the place principle, which have significantly strengthened. The new Planning Act has also introduced regional spatial strategies and local place plans. And we've also got, obviously, the overarching Scotland's climate targets introducing this new urgency. And then, obviously, very topical right now, we've got post-Brexit funding. So we had quite a blank canvas for how to approach this work from the outset. So we set out our thinking in terms of a direction of travel for what regional land use partnerships could deliver, and then worked with stakeholders to develop this and develop our thinking over a period of 6 months. So we set out initially that the establishment of regional land use partnerships could offer a significant new opportunity to deliver a step change in the way land use decisions are made. We were quite clear that the partnership should have a clear focus to drive action and delivery on the ground of targeted and prioritised outcomes, and this should be at a pace and scale to meet the climate and environment targets. We didn't want from the outset these partnerships to just be a talking shop. They needed to actually deliver action on the ground. The other sort of opportunities that we set out was that they could be a collaborative and innovative approach to land use planning, and they could empower local and regional decision making, and that should be across the whole of Scotland through producing land use frameworks. And they should also have the opportunity to support economic recovery and renewal. So why a regional approach? A clear national land use strategy is important, but we decided that it's not practical for the competing demands and choices of land to be determined only at a national level. But equally, it's neither reasonable nor desirable to expect all these choices to be made at individual land holding level. So we've recommended that it's at the regional scale at which opportunities, options, priorities can be considered, as well as implications with others can be realised, and then the accountability for the choices can be transparent and accessible for all in the region. So I'll just move on to sort of our recommendations. As I've said, I'm going to sort of stay quite high level. There's more information in our report, but I also am happy to discuss this sort of separately if anyone's interested. So overall, we submitted our advice to government in September and it was published on the 3rd of November. Some of the key recommendations that we have made are that basically partnerships could have the potential to deliver on quite a wide range of functions, and also that their role could sort of evolve once they're established. So there needs to be a level of flexibility in their structure from the outset. Ultimately, they need to engage widely, develop and drive delivery, prioritize and target delivery of funding, and broker collaboration and delivery. So in terms of their functions and the wide range of functions, as I've said, we see an opportunity for them to evolve once they're established, but from the outset, the partnerships need to be able to engage widely on the land use opportunities, the choices, the priorities, and drive what we are referring to as a collaborative approach to land use decision making in the public interest. This will be achieved through developing and driving delivery of a regional land use framework through best practice engagement. And then as a consequence of this, the partnerships will be able to prioritise target delivery of public funding streams and also broker collaboration and delivery with local delivery partners. Moving on to the geography of the partnerships, this was quite an area of attention during sort of our interim report stage, with conversation taking place around the partnerships being based on physical geographies such as catchments or administrative geographies. We have come to recommend that there should be a phased establishment of 12 to 15 partnerships, and that should be based on the geography of planning authorities and essentially the regional spatial strategy boundaries. The reason for this is that the partnerships can then integrate with other plans and help support the urban-rural land use divide and consequently covering all of Scotland. In terms of governance, we have recommended that the partnerships are made up of an appointed board of 10 to 12 individuals serving fixed terms, and individuals appointed to board will be drawn from 3 pools of expertise. That's public body government individuals, relevant sector expertise, and also community. And the boards should be capable of directing priorities for public funding, but also able to draw in wider funding and finance beyond public funds. So for example, natural capital finance. The partnerships will be underpinned by an accountable body that would administer the function, and we've recommended that there should be a national group to provide oversight and maintain sort of collective delivery momentum in relation to national targets. So in terms of implementation timescales, we've recommended that Scottish Government work with early adopters to establish FEPS partnerships this year, so 2021. And by doing that, we'll be testing approaches, and this will inform sort of wider implementation of partnerships across Scotland. We've recommended a timescale for partnerships and their frameworks to be in place for all of Scotland ahead of the next climate change plan, so that's 23-24. And also in terms of their implementation, that they should integrate with established regional economic and spatial planning, and particularly regional spatial strategies. So we have made recommendations over whether there should be sort of a statutory legislation to link these 2 mechanisms together. So unfortunately, I forgot to set my timer, but hopefully Zoe will keep me right. This is my last slide. So in terms of supporting work, just so you don't think I was sat in my office coming up with these ideas myself. From the outset, we worked through stakeholder engagement. So we were very focused that the recommendations we make should be based on engaging with stakeholders and everybody feeding into the recommendations that we developed. So we held a number of stakeholder workshops. We outlined emerging principles. We invited comment from stakeholders and asked them to help sort of shape the principles and thinking, both at initial and interim report stage. We published our interim report, which set out thinking and proposals, and again asked for sort of further comment on this. We held a webinar and a public survey asking for comment on the recommendations that we were making, and a webinar aimed at those on the ground who would be involved in partnerships to understand more about it. And then we also commissioned some external work to support, discuss, explore some of the recommendations we were making. So we carried out a review of international experience of land use plans and worked with consultants to look at international examples of governance arrangements for regional scale land use planning. We also worked with University of Edinburgh, and they mapped existing initiatives in Scotland, explored governance models, functions, and looked at strengths and weaknesses. And we also asked James Hutton Institute to carry out a research review and provide expert opinion on some of the issues we presented in our interim report. So hopefully that gives you sort of a very whistle-stop tour to our work and our recommendations, and I'm happy to take questions at the end. Thank you.